Welcome everybody to the Chess Lab. Welcome to How to Reassess Your Chess, episode 3. And as soon as I say this, I realize that is episode 2. So I have to update it. So as you can see, I have a little bit of a different outlook because my hair are left down. They're not tied up as usual. And also, I'm cold as fuck. It's so cold here. Don't know how it's so cold, but it is. Let me check something, okay. Okay, so we were talking about the concept of imbalances, yeah. We looked at the imbalances, what they are, and the list. Then we went over superior minor piece, pawn structure, space, material. Then we went over the control of a key file, which is usually for rooks, control of a whole or a weak square, which is usually for the knights. Then we talked about leading development, initiative, and king safety. Then we talked about static versus dynamics and planning. Now we are going to try to do Topalov-Sassikiran exercise. Even though it's not in problem form, so let's try to solve it. So let's look at this position. As you can see, I have my jacket on because it's really cold here. And let's try to evaluate, shall we? So let's look at this position. Let's count material first. 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. So, 7 pawn each. 2 knights, 2 bishops, 2 rooks, 1 queen. And hopefully we still have the kings. So that's interesting. Okay, so material is equal. King safety. King safety, I will say that both kings are very safe. Let's try now look at imbalances then, other than king safety, which is also a potential imbalance. Hopefully you guys are hearing me because the microphone is a little bit further away, but I don't know, I'm feeling very intellectual at this moment, and I just noticed that you guys can't see the position. And that's why... Okay, so now you can see it. Sorry guys for that. My apologies. Now you can see it, right? It's not ideal, but... Whoa, that's crazy. Whoa, that's even more crazy. What's going on? Okay, this should be perfect. Okay, so let's again count material is equal. I didn't lie, as you can see. So imbalances, we have more space on the queen side, a lot of more space on the queen side, and we also have do we have more space in the center? I wouldn't say so, because we have a d4 pawn, they have a d5 pawn. What I wanted to say is that hopefully you can hear me, because I feel very intellectual. I'm relaxed on the chair. I'm in this wizard type of outlook, more homeless than wizard, but let's say wizard. And my hands are doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I feel intellectual. I feel like I'm understanding things. Now, am I actually understanding things? Absolutely not. But let's pretend I am. So, okay, so as you can see, there is space advantage and whatnot. Key squares. Let's talk about key squares. There is the e4 square, which is outpost for our opponent knight, which is a little bit annoying. Our bishop on b2 is poor guy, severely injured. Is not really active. Their bishop on d6, on the other hand, is quite good. So if we compare pieces, their bishop's definitely much better than our bishop, poor thing. And what else? Let's talk about the light square bishop, though. Now I like it. Their light square bishop is very actively staring at the S of their own pawn. So first of all, that's pretty gay, but also, it's not very active. So, that's kind of the situation. Our light square bishop, on the other hand, is looking at a very good diagonal. If it wasn't for that very annoying knight, probably an opponent in Scooby-Doo. Anyways, so what else to say? I don't know, I'm so colorful today and jokeful. I guess that being cold makes me want to warm myself a little bit. Okay. So what else? The knight on e2. What is that guy doing? I don't know. But the knight on the d7 on the other hand is not like claiming supremacy on his own. So I would say they are pretty equal. Both of the knights must be a little bit improved. Now I think I remember the solution. I didn't remember the solution at first because I went already over this chapter, but I think I'm remembering it now. And I think that what you need to look at is this bishop, right, which is probably black's best piece, and our bishop, which is arguably our worst piece, right? So an idea is to play bishop a3 to trade off these two bishops, and if we can achieve that, which we will be able to achieve that, it's good for us. Now, after bishop a3, you have to make sure that you understand what changes, and one change is that this bishop is no longer controlling the c3 square. However, the knight cannot go there because we have our own knight controlling it, so it's kind of okay. And again, after bishop to a3 is interesting because moves like bishop takes, I don't think they work. We are sufficiently guarding this whole space. And if they play something like queen here, that's still not a threat, but we can just take at this point. I'm not saying that's the best thing to do, but in general, we can just take. Another idea that I had was to play bishop takes. My apologies. And then, go back with the knight. And we have the c4 square. We can push this pawn to e5 to activate our bishop. But this is a little bit weird because if we push, then perhaps also their bishop becomes stronger. And in general is not... Sorry again, it doesn't feel like a good idea. So I'm cold, I keep sneezing, and you're probably thinking, oh, you're getting sick. But I've lived long enough to recognize myself when I'm getting sick, and trust me, this is not me getting sick. It's just a moment where I'm having everything, don't know exactly why, and then it passes and it's fine. I really know myself quite well. I can tell if I'm getting sick and I'm not getting sick. It looks like, but it's not. It's just a very momentary moment of changes in temperature that produce things, and things happen. I'm already feeling a little bit hotter. I'm always very hot, of course, but I'm feeling even hotter. And I may have to take this off. Okay, so you guys came here for chess, and well, you probably already ran away for the jokes. Anyways, all right. So I think bishop a3 is the move. The problem with bishop a3 is that then there are other moves and I don't remember them. But okay, even if bishop a3 is not the solution, since I don't see tactical shots, I still will play bishop a3 to try to trade our perhaps worst piece for their best piece. So I'm gonna play bishop a3. It happens to be correct. Okay. Now at this point it's not so clear what to do, because you may say, well, just take their bishop, right? Yeah, but their bishop's not going anywhere, you see? The bishop's not going anywhere. So do I take it or not? Because if I take it, then they can take back, opening up the c file. However, after that I can play, let's say, rook to c1 to try to control the c file, and it seems like I may be able to succeed, and they're gonna have a pretty bad pawn structure, and that's pretty much it. So I'm just gonna take it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It happens. Seems to be correct. And now let's consider taking, simply because it's a forced move, but again, I don't like it. I'm doubling their pawns and stuff. I can play knight f4 here, which attacks the rook and pressures this pawn, which wins a tempo. However, it leaves this square hanging. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm more of a fan of rook c1, or perhaps queen to b3, right? But definitely knight to f4 is a move. Also knight to g3, but knight to g3, what's the threat? Taking? Not really, because it just blunders a piece. So what's the threat? Again, knight f4 is interesting. Knight f4 is interesting. But again, I can't help myself but feel like this is not that great of a move. But on the other hand, it's not terrible either. But after this, there is this, you see. I don't like it. So queen b3 is a move, pressuring this guy, perhaps knight f5 to follow. I don't know, but rook c1 also feels so good, so I'm just gonna play rook c1. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It happens. And it's correct, rook c1. This one I didn't remember, so I'm kind of happy that I played rook c1. Again, it's about you know, a new and balanced form, which is this open file, so I guess countering the control over it is not bad. Okay, now let's exit, and I'm gonna read the explanation, but I'm gonna read it through here, which is easier for you guys to follow. Sorry, if I do this, you don't see. If I do this, you see. If I do this, you see, but it's worst. So I'm gonna do this, and you see right. Okay, so this is the Topalov Sasikirian exercise. Once you have read this book and fully integrated all its lessons, a glance will give you the necessary information to find White's best plan. How did Topalov play? Bishop to a3. White forces the exchange of his worst piece for the critically important bishop on d6. Rook to c8, bishop takes d6, and now there are a couple of options. C takes d6 was played by Sasikirian. Of course, rook takes d6 was possible, but then c7, this guy here, would be a permanent source of concern. After c takes d6, which is what happened in the game, that's no longer the case. In addition, the e5 square, which is this square here, as you can see highlighted in yellow, is also covered, ending all knight f3, e5, c6 ideas. Interesting, also looking at c6. Of course, c takes d6, which is the current move, comes with its own baggage. The d5 pawn is weak, which is this guy here on a light square, and will need probably babysitting for the rest of the game. Here, rook to c1 by Topalov, with a clear advantage for white due to black's structural problems. Okay, now we're gonna look at the Vasilin Topalov against Krishnan Sasikirian, played in Sofia 2007. And we are going to see at the whole game, so that's pretty interesting. So we are going to see the flow of the moves of the opening in correlation with the middle game positions, which is going to be very, very interesting. I'm going to take the jacket and put it above my legs, because all of a sudden cold has moved into my legs, which is very, very interesting. Okay. It's like I'm analyzing my cold like is a position. Oh, that's very interesting. Like, shut up, dude. Anyways, so d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, so that's like an opening, names or something, e3, b6, bishop d3, bishop b7, attacking the pawn on g2, maybe, because there are some crazy lines you wouldn't believe. But okay, knight f3 defends it. Castles. So far, Russian school of chess, white is developing his pieces. There is still this bishop on c1, but there are prospects of playing e4 or perhaps developing in other ways. d5 by black, a3, asking that bishop what he wants to do with his life. Bishop to d6, black also, kinda Russian school of chess, you know, of course, trying to keep his pieces active. C takes, pawn takes, and now b4. Gaining some space over to the queen side, perhaps preparing bishop to b2, but as we know, the bishop is going to stay on c1 for a while, because we play bishop from c1 to... No, actually it was on b2, so I'm inventing things. Knight bd7, b5, gaining space, knight e4, bishop b2, defending the knight, rook e8, a4, rook e6, knight to e2, and now a5. So, guys, now it's important. I'm making a lot of jokes in this video for some reason, maybe because I'm cold and I'm trying not to think about it, but now it's a little bit of a serious moment. We have to pay attention, because here is where the master evaluates the position. Okay, so that's what we're trying to learn, how to evaluate positions better. So this is critical moment of our reading here. So pay attention. Okay. is similar to what we already read, but is not quite the same, is more complete. So let's pay attention. Once you have read this book and fully integrated all its lessons, a glance will give you the following information. White has an advantage in queenside space. Okay. Black has a potentially weak pawn on c7. Interesting, this is something I didn't say, I didn't notice. If black pushes the c7 pawn to c6 or b5, b takes c6 will leave black with a weak pawn on b6 and a hole on b5. Okay, that's a very interesting consideration. It's like calculation, but on a level idea, on an idea level. So black's d5 pawn is weak since it can be defended by another pawn. Okay. Black's only source of counterplay is on the king side. His d6 bishop, e6 rook, and e4 knight and queen are all eyeing that area. Black's b7 bishop, which is defending d5, is playing a purely defensive role. Black's dark square bishop, which is the bishop on d6, is giving firm support to the c7 pawn while also playing a key role in any kingside attack that he might drum up. White's b2 bishop is inactive. Armed with this imbalanced breakdown, it might strike you that exchanging White's worst piece for one of Black's best would be a great idea. And so, with no calculation, planning, or further rumination, White could confidently play the move Topalov himself chose. Now, other moves that may come to mind are again knight g3 and stuff like this, but this is not really, if you think about it, it's not fulfilling the demands of the position. Because, you know, these two knights are not really, in a way, an imbalance, because they are both equal. They're not optimally placed, they are not terrible, but they are the same, right? An imbalance, a true imbalance, very strong imbalance, is these two bishops. If these two bishops were not present, but again, the imbalance would be the semi-open file with a weak c-pawn. So if the two bishops, let's say, disappeared, the best move would probably be rook c1, probably. And then you can think about perhaps queen b3 to put pressure here. And then you can think about knight f5. Knight f4. Right? But first you have to answer the demands of the position. So yeah, Topalov played bishop a3. White forces the exchange of his worst piece for the critically important bishop on d6. Rook c8, we saw that. Bishop takes d6, c takes d6. Of course, rook takes d6 is possible, but then c7 would be permanently weak. After c takes d6, that's no longer the case. Covers e5, comes with his own baggage. d5 pawn is weak and need babysitting. Okay, we already looked at this. Now, rook to c1. Okay, this is something that it's very interesting, because this is where the puzzle ended, right? And Silman was like, yeah, here white is comfortable. There are weakness with black's pawns. However, you probably wondered, even automatically, intuitively, subconsciously, I don't know how to say it, but you probably wonder, okay, but how do I win this? Like, I would love to see exactly how do I win. I think it's very normal, natural way of wondering. And here we are going to see it. We are going to see it, because Topalov is going to show us. So, rook c1, let's see what black does. Black improves his knight, adding control of e4. And now there is this move, h3. Very interesting. Topalov, new in chess, now said, as you can see, all this is not about concrete lines, but about clear positional weaknesses. I knew that it didn't matter how long it would take me, but in the end, all the rooks would be exchanged, further highlighting his structural problems. So he's thinking a lot ahead. Topalov, one of the greatest attacking players in the world, is making it clear that his course in this game isn't dependent on his personal tastes, that is, attack, but rather on the dictates of the board, a quiet build-up in accordance with the imbalances. So that's very interesting. Topalov, who loves to attack, is not going for an attack, because that's not the demand of the position. Topalov is going for a positional master plan, right, rather than an attack, because that's, again, what the position demands. I'm repeating the same things a lot, for myself first, but also for you guys, because it's important. Yesterday, I looked at an interview, Chess Mastered Chess, or Chess with Mustard, or something. You know, he's a guy that has a chess podcast. I'm sure you have heard of him, because he podcasts, he interviews many famous chess personalities, not just players, but also coaches and other figures. And he interviewed Jacob Agard, who is well-renowned chess trainer for like every type of player up to literally 2700 level, even 2800. That guy is really made for training. And you know, he said, I don't even remember why I started this speech, but he said something smart. Now I forgot. You know, he said that he said many things similar to what Silman says. You know, you have to follow what the position demands and not your own thoughts and all these things. Oh no, yeah. I was saying that I was repeating things a lot. Yeah, that's what he said. He also said those things, but he said that being a pro at something or a master at something is 90%, perhaps even more, basics, right? You do your basics consistently over time and you just get results, right? And every once in a while, in that 5-10% of the time, you get that brilliancy, right? That breaking the rules, that's crazy. But most of the times, it's just being able to apply the fundamentals. So that's why I repeated these things over and over and over, because outside of like Silman Endgame book, outside of this book, outside of perhaps a couple of other resources around, there's not really much else. It's all about trying to be able to master those few but key elements. So we don't really need more material. What we need to do is to go play a game, and it's going to be very difficult because one thing is seeing it done by a pro, one thing is doing it yourself, but it's going to be very difficult. But what we have to do is we have to play and at some point stop and evaluate. And it's going to be difficult, it's going to be complicated. We are going to do an evaluation that may be correct, and then we play moves that are still wrong, right? But we do it over and over and over, and eventually we master it, right? But this is everything. Like what's in front of you guys is everything. Understanding the imbalances and trying to play moves around those. That's it. You don't need to be fancy. You don't need to look for fancinesses, right? So that's very important. Okay. So rook to e7, trying to perhaps go to c7 to contest control of this file. Queen to b3 to connect the rooks. h6, rook takes c8, queen takes c8, rook c1, rook c7, rook takes c7, queen takes c7, and now queen to c2. Topalov had these to say in regard to the position that would result after the exchange of queens. So imagine queen takes, bishop takes. I can chase away the knight on e4, perhaps by moving your own knight and play f3, for example. Transfer my bishop to b3, and sooner or later I will exert pressure with two pieces on d5 and push my kingside pawns. So that's very interesting. Okay, that's no getting around it. This is clearly a plan. But did he use any strange system to create it? No. This too is based on the imbalances. He will chase away black's advanced knight by f2, f3. Knights need advanced squares to be effective. Thus, he intends to turn a good enemy piece into a passive one. He'll aim his pieces against the weakness on d5, which is an imbalance, and then he'll gain space on the kingside by advancing his pawn there, which is also an imbalance, which will give him yet another positive imbalance to work with, exactly, which is kingside more space. More space on the kingside. Okay, so queen e7, black declines the trade, and now queen to c1. White's queen already controls the c file, but now it also defends e3, so it overprotects e3, so you get out of certain tactics. This shows White's intention to chase Black's one active piece away with an eventual f2, f3, when the e3 pawn will be happy to have some support. Okay, so this is even more practical. He just wants to move this knight, play f3, and after the knight moves, this is not hanging. Okay, very nice. g6, knight h2. As you can see, with the idea of going f3, interesting that h2 was the square chosen. King g7, h4. Interesting move. Knight e8, attacking the pawn on h4. f3, no time to capture the pawn because the knight will hang. Knight goes back, now the pawn on h4 is, well, automatically defended in a way. Knight to f1 overprotects e3 and in general tries to improve the position of the knight. h5, trying to fix the weakness. Knight to f4. Knight to f4, improving the position of the knight and start to put some pressure over here, but also over here. And now knight to d7. Knight c7 followed by knight e6 was a better setup, trying to challenge that knight on f4 with a knight that would be passive otherwise. So knight d7, queen to e1. Now perhaps going to g3 to really create some problems. Knight f8, queen to g3, threatening knight takes h5 check. King h6 avoids that. Knight takes h5 anyways. Here we go. King f2, followed by knight from f1 to d2 to b1 to c3, which really puts pressure on d5, would have continued the grind and maintained the pressure. Very Zinzi-Hasvili type of plan. However, Topalov decides to up the ante in his opponent's time pressure. Can Black find all the right defensive moves with his clock rapidly ticking down to nothing? The rest of the game, which has nothing to do with our team, is given with minimum comments. Okay, so we're not really interested in that. So g takes h5. The problem with king takes is that there is this crazy move queen f4 with g4 to follow, or even, sorry, knight g3, which is mate, and it's over. And yeah. So g takes h5, queen g8 now, f5, only move. Again, guys, I'm not really understanding too much what's going on, but it doesn't matter. Well, now if you take with the knight, that's a fork, so you can take, but also there are, if you move this knight, then queen h6 is made. Also, there is the threat of queen h8 mate, if I'm not crazy. So knight to g6, bishop takes g6, king takes g6, knight takes h5. The only move is to take with the king, but if you take with the king, check. Oh, it's actually mate. So queen e3 check, you move, now queen e7. That's a blunder. Black cracks in time trouble and plays the losing move. Correct was queen takes d4, don't ask me why, when a draw would be the most likely outcome, and that's why in the very beginning here it was better to go for this maneuver. Okay, so knight takes h5, takes, queen g8, and knight takes h5 is crazy. Queen takes e3, king h2, queen e7, knight f4. Now what happens if you take with the king? Well, you lose the knight, among other things. Probably check. Check first. There is queen h6. So yeah, you just lose the knight, and then there are mates. So queen back. Now check. King f6, g4. Trying to trade the queen, declines with check. Try to trade the queens, declines. Repeats one time, but then actually trades. Queen takes b6 was even stronger, he says, going after this pawn, and then the bishop is a little bit loose. But okay, as you can see, he's down a piece, but for technically 2 pawns, but we can say 3 pawns. Even trades this one, and he's just a completely winning endgame, and that's crazy. Okay, so very nice illustration by Topalov. Now you're probably thinking, but I would have never played that sacrifice. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have played most of the moves I saw, but the sacrifice was not necessary. Okay, so this is Nigel Shore against Ian Timman. Is a very famous game. I treated this as a puzzle the first time that I was reading through this, but I managed to solve it because I already saw this, and I managed to all of a sudden remembering it. It's very brilliant. If you've never seen it, I mean, if you want to stop and see and try to find the move, of course it's on the screen, but but it's very famous. And okay, here if we evaluate the position, 3-3-1, 3-3-1, 2 rooks, 1 knight, material is equal. Black has a bishop, white has a knight, white has more space on the queen side, the center, and the king side. Perhaps the center, that's it, but okay. The 2 rooks are much better because they're occupying the only open file. Black cannot contest that. The queen is much better for white because is close to the black king. Black king safety is tricky. A move like knight g5 looks amazing, but g2 would hang with basically checkmating a move after king f4 and well, not queen f3 because there is the knight, but I guess something like queen takes f2 and is not looking good. So, oh, that's the mate. Oh yeah, after knight f3, queen takes f3, so it's mating 3 if you move the knight, basically, I think. But anyways, it doesn't matter, you cannot move the knight. But what can you do? Well, does black has any play? The answer is no. So you can simply play the crazy king f4, king g5, king h6, and it's GG. It's just GG. Crazy. So king f4. This move shocks many players, but if you had a bishop on d2, would you hesitate to play bishop h6, which force mate? Of course not. Then, if it's safe, why not use the king in the same way? Bishop c8, king g5, not giving a single thing in the world, and black resigns. The threat of king h6 followed by mate on g7 ends the game. For example, if king h7, which prevents this move, there is queen takes g6 check. Look at that, and this is pinned. There is also rook f7 when white's king finishes up its journey with deadly effects, so this is also winning. But okay, after queen takes g6, king here, check, king f6, and mate follows. White's total domination of the kings and dark square. So what's shorts? Play a plan. So what's shorts? Playing a plan or an illustration of the power? Sorry. So what's shorts play? A plan or an illustration of the power of imbalanced consciousness? Call it anything you like, but pay attention to the thing that allowed you to find the solution, the imbalances. And imbalanced consciousness is going to be a chapter of this book. Philosophy. Imbalances are the doorway to planning, which again we talked about it in the previous video. You know that that's critical. So anyways, now let's talk about Mr. Metallic and Mr. Pink versus Mr. Orange. This is a thought experiment, basically. So let's go back. Let's take a moment off from our look at heady concepts and strange new philosophies and have a bit of fun. For me, that's not fun. This was boring the first time I read it and it's going to be boring now, but let's go. We are going to look at a game through the eyes of three kinds of players. One, Mr. Metallic, shows us a person who dreams of thinking like a machine. The second is a guy, Mr. Pink, who knows nothing of imbalances, but seeks to live and die by the chess is about material and threats mainstream. Our third, Mr. Orange, is an imbalanced aficionado. The first two will team up and take white. The third will handle the black pieces. Note that the white players will be better at calculation, while black will have a superior knowledge of opening theory. Okay, so the first guy calculates a lot, like a computer. The second guy is all about material, and the third guy is a little bit about quality, you know. So Mr. Metallic and Mr. Pink versus Mr. Orange. This was played in Fantasyland in 2009. If you guys weren't there, what were you doing? Where were you? So let's start. When there is written the name of the guys, is because one is talking. So Mr. Metallic. Any reasonable move leaves us 0.12 to 0.18 ahead. I'll go for that 0.18 figure. Again, this is the computer kind of guy. Mr. Pink, which is the very material kind of guy. I want to play e4. Does this hang anything? No. So far, so good. Are we threatening anything after e4? Not yet, but once we get our bishop and queen out, we'll shred the sucker. Okay, e4 is good. So e4, and now let's go Mr. Orange, which will be the hero of this story. Mr. Orange. They gained central space, freed their light square bishop and queen, and took control over the d5 square. e4 is obviously a good move. But my very strange looking opponents, I don't know why it reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, but my very strange looking opponent seems to be aggressive sorts, so I'll throw a bit of violence back at them and see how they react. Boom, d5. Mr. Metallic, which is the computer. Ah, an inferior reply. Now we are 0.37 up. Victory is almost ours. Mr. Pink. Danger, danger. Our e-pawn is hanging. Danger. We must take his pawn, and when he recaptures, we'll bring a new attacking piece out and attack his queen at the same time. Oh yeah, it's going to be good. So they take. Mr. Orange, they played the best reply. I'll develop a piece and take back on d5 with my knight. I've looked this line over a bit and it's interesting, especially if they don't know what they're doing. So knight f6. Mr. Metallic, I think we can win material. By definition, I will eat everything that's offered. Mr. Pink, he didn't allow queen takes d5 knight c3 when we are attacking his queen. He will be dead meat then. Now I think we can win a pawn with c4. True, in that case he can attack our queen with bishop g4, but we could attack him right back with f3. Am I good or what? So they play c4. Now Mr. Orange, again, the, let's say, protagonist, the hero playing with the black pieces, says, the vacant look in their eyes tells me that they don't have a clue. Of course I can't be sure of that. Perhaps they intend to answer my c6 with d4 when we will transpose into the Panov-Botvinnik variation of the Caro-Kann. Since I'm mainly a Caro player, I don't mind this at all. So even Mr. Orange is not perfect. So c6, Mr. Metallic. He's giving us a pawn. We'll have at least a 0.26 plus, which is the computer. Mr. Pig, which is the materialistic. We can chop on c6 when we are a solid pawn up. What if we take d takes c6 and he attacks us with bishop g4? He's also afraid of like attacks and all that, so he considers this. We can still attack him back with f3, but I see something that's really cool. C takes b7, bishop takes d1, b8 equals queen, and it's over. I'm a genius. So of course some of these lines are a little bit crazy, right? But hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm really far away from the microphone. Let me make it a little bit closer. But of course it's to try to explain the way of thinking of, well, not necessarily different players, because Mr. Metallic is a little bit inhuman, but Mr. Pink is already, you know, perhaps. But okay, d takes c6, Mr. Orange, wow. I didn't think they would go for that. I'm now a pawn down, but after I recapture with my knight, I'll have a lead in development, which gives me a dynamic plus and chances for attack, control of the whole on d4, a long-term static advantage, and pressure against white's backward d-pawn, another long-term static plus. So, you know, controlling a square, backwards pawn, these are static things, okay, at least in this context. So knight takes c6. Mr. Metallic, a pity. The other recapture gave us at least a 0.72 advantage. Now he has some play, but a pawn is a pawn, so we should be happy. Mr. Pink, so we are already a pawn up. Does he have any threats? Just bishop g4, but we can answer it with knight f3 or bishop e2 or f3 or just about anything. All we need to do now is get our guys out, castle, and our extra pawn will win in the endgame. Isn't that what the grandmasters always do? So knight to c3. Now it's back to Mr. Orange. I own d4, but I would like to increase my control over that square again. I also need to develop my dark square bishop and castle. e5 seems to address all these issues. Of course, e5 does weaken the d5 square, but he is so far behind in development that there is no way for him to take advantage of d5 for a long time to come. And it's interesting because, of course, this is a made-up variation, and, you know, black doesn't exist. I mean, he exists in Fantasyland, sorry. But, you know, that's Sealman, basically, right? So that's like a master, in a way, a strong player that is thinking. Of course, he's a strong player that chose an unusual line, right, in the Scandinavian, but nonetheless, he's a player that, you know, is trying to cause some issues, so... It's interesting to read Mr. Orange considerations. So e5, Mr. Metallic 0.09. We are still in charge and we are still a pawn ahead. Mr. Pink, he intends to answer knight f6 with e4, attacking our knight. Fortunately, we should play d3 when his pawn advance is stopped. Then we can follow with knight f3, bishop e2, castle, and we are on our way to glory. So d3. And Mr. Orange says, which again, you can consider him like a master or something. Okay, I have all sorts of good positional options and I'm a bit confused. Bishop b4 and bishop c5 both looks promising, though I don't really need to chop on c3 after bishop b4. Since after b takes c3, he will silently cover the d4. Oh, very important. That's like playing for your imbalances, right? One imbalance. Sorry guys if I'm yawning, but I've already been through this and I'm getting super bored. But basically he's saying if bishop b4 and takes, they take, and then all of a sudden they're controlling d4. And one positive imbalance, meaning an imbalance in black's favor here, since we are looking for a black point of view, despite the board being flipped, is the d4 square. So you don't want to relinquish control of the d4 square by playing bishop b4, bishop takes. So he's basically excluding bishop b4 because of this imbalance consideration. I'll try bishop f5 since the targets this. Sorry, I'll try bishop f5 since that targets his weakness on d3, while also preparing the well-timed dynamic thrust e4, e5, if the situation calls for it. Bishop f5 also gives me queen d7, followed by a long castle when I'm really piling up on d3. So bishop f5 would be the light square bishop. Yes, bishop f5. So Mr. Metallic, 0.26 up and an extra pawn. It looks nice for us. So that's the engine. Mr. Pink, which is the very materialistic, afraid of every threat to material and stuff. Can we make any threats? Here we go. Queen f3 hits the bishop, but knight e4 defends it. It attacks our queen and threatens knight c2. No, we can't do that. We'll just continue our plan, develop castle, and slide into a pawn-up endgame victory. After knight f3, we don't have to worry about e4, since it would be helping us reach that pawn-up. Now, guys, something also to notice is that, like, the engine doesn't really make explanations. It doesn't construct anything. You know, it's just consider, okay, an extra pawn still looks nice for us, but this is not any additions. So this is perhaps a way to teach us by Silvan that, like, the engines are cool, but again, it doesn't help you necessarily understand chess more. It may help you districate some very highly tactical positions in a moment, right? If you have some questions, if you're wondering, and that's cool, and I also use it, but don't substitute it for your own thinking. That's the point, which to me is obvious, and I never really use the engine to substitute my thinking, but I always like to use the engine. But yeah, I can see that people may have many biases when it comes to using the engine. For some reason, I always had a good relationship with the engine, which is an interesting thing. Anyways. So, okay, let's keep going. So knight f3, Mr. Orange, which is like our hero. It's hard to go wrong here. I can play queen d7, followed by long castle, and snip off d3. But that gives him time to castle. I really like the fact that his king is sitting in the middle, so I'll play more aggressively. Bishop e4 is very tempting, since it makes e4, e5, even stronger, but e4 also looks good, and it forces him to take a path of my choosing. There is just one problem. What happens after e4, knight h4? How about bishop g4, f3, e takes, knight takes, bishop c5, and if I can castle, his Swiss cheese position should allow me to wipe him out. Because after bishop e2 and castle, you realize white cannot castle himself because of the bishop, so it's a problem. So, after knight f3, he chooses e4. Mr. Metallic, white remains 0.17 ahead with knight h4. Let's do it. Besides, I think we are doing well. After knight h4, bishop g4, f3, e takes, knight takes, bishop c5, queen e2 check. Mr. Pink. Knight h4 does attack his bishop, but after bishop g4 he just attacks us back. Besides, aren't knights on the ring supposed to be grim? Or was that dim? Well, in any event, I don't like it at all, and your knight h4, bishop g4 now is replying to Mr. Metallic. He's saying that if this happens, right, there is king d7, when his threat of rook e8 scares me to death. Let's just take on e4 and go into a pawn-up endgame. So, Mr. Metallic, but I see a lot of other variations after king d7. Let me show you. Mr. Pink, no, we are playing d takes c4 and that's that. So this is like if you basically combine not being well equipped with like understanding of imbalances and you only use your engine, is a recipe for disaster. This is basically what Silman is saying. Like, the engine is cool to use it in analysis, but the reality is you don't really understand it. If you try to play, let's say you try to cheat, right? You're playing a human and you're using the engine, and at some point, super complex position, and you stop using the engine, you're screwed, right? So again, the engine is not substituting for your thinking. You use the engine as a tool. I have a panino here, like a bread with something inside. So I'm gonna eat it after I finish this. So D takes, knight takes. Okay, so Mr. Pink is like, no, I'm scared, and he takes. He takes. Mr. Orange, I can take on e4 or take on d1. Both look good, since any opening of the position has to favor my leading development. I'll take on e4 and see if he wants to capture on d8 and bring my rook into play. So he takes. And now Mr. Metallic goes crazy. He's like, let's play bishop b3, bishop b4, which threatens the knight, queen b3, queen f6, rook c1, and now this crazy bishop h3. If you take the knight is lost and the position collapses probably. Queen c2, trying to hold on, bishop f5, bishop d3, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop takes, that's pinned, knight here, long castle, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, b takes, f3, this is crazy. And after rook d7 and king f2, 0-2-2 for us. If bishop takes a7, rook check, bishop here, rook here, king here, bishop here, that's 0-0. So we are on after knight takes c4, right? Mr. Metallic just goes crazy, and Mr. Pink is like, say what? I didn't understand any of these moves, me neither. It all looks insane. Who would play a move like bishop h3, and even if the line you gave did occur, the opposite color bishops make it a dead draw. You are starting to freak me out, Mr. Metallic. Instead of that garbage, let's just play bishop e2 and try to castle. So bishop e2, Mr. Orange is going to castle. So this is the master, right? The hero. Mr. Orange is going to castle. Remember, Mr. Orange is focused on the imbalances. He wants his opponent king to stay in the center and all that. I have to play with as much energy as possible. All is get his house in order. Bishop b4 developing with threats has to be the right, since queen b3 runs into knight c5. Okay. So he plays bishop b4. Mr. Metallic, queen b3, knight c5, queen back to d1, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes d1. There would be queen a5 here, but let's say queen d1, bishop takes d1. Long castle is minus 0-3-4, so we can't do that. We have to play bishop d2, he's saying after this. Mr. Pink, why would we move our queen to b3 and then back to d1? You are spouting gibberish. Bishop d2 is clearly the way to go. So they play bishop d2. For different reasons, but they play bishop d2. Mr. Orange, he threatens to trade a lot of stuff off. So I'll capture on d2 and leave him in an STP. So knight takes d2. We'll end our three-way battle here. Okay, so basically here the discussion of the three imaginary players ends, and we are only gonna consider like the moves. So this is Silman talking to us directly now, without weird other things. So knight takes d2. After queen takes d2, there is check, takes, knight to d4, which threatens knight c2. Bishop to d1, because if you were to short castle, there is bishop takes c3 and the bishop drops. So bishop d1, long castle, castle. However, knight f1 is a better defense, and now rook h2e8 is miserable for white since all these pieces are bad, and bishop d3 is a strong threat. Okay, so knight d2, and here knight to d4, threatening knight c2. And here rook to c1. If you play castle, there is bishop to c1, and after queen e1, if you go to c1 again, bishop takes c3, it's GG, because knight takes c2 also wins the queen rather also than the bishop, more other than the bishop. Queen e1, castle, and white is in bad shape. Rook e1 is following, rook e8 is coming, and stuff like that. So rook c1 trying to defend, and now castle. And now knight f1, unfortunately again you cannot castle because of knight takes e2, and here after queen takes e2, bishop to d3, right? And if you take with the knight, you lose the knight on d2, because the knight spin to d2. So you will lose an exchange. So after castling, there's knight f1. Now queen g5, attacking g2. Queen b6 may even be better, but okay. Knight e3, defense g2. Rook a to d8. Threatening all sort of shenanigans. And now h4. We find that we were following the game Savchenko, Asrian, Moscow 2007, so these two guys were real people. Now queen h6 was very strong, but he played queen to f6, and now short castle. I'm not understanding these moves, guys, don't worry, but... okay. Short castle, knight takes e2, queen takes e2. If you take with the knight... oh, the queen hangs, so you have to take with the queen, but now bishop d3, winning material. So, okay, basically saying imbalances are important. Okay. Now, Mr. Metallic and Mr. Pink versus Mr. Orange again. What was the point of this example? These color-coded players are representation of three real human types. Mr. Metallic. In an age where... so this, guys, is important, because I know it was a little bit funny, it was a little bit lighthearted, you know, and you may think, especially if you're an adult improver, you may think that this is all bullshit, right? Like, give me the real serious stuff. But the real serious stuff, you know, what does it even mean? You know, this was just metaphors to try to understand better certain concepts, and he used a little bit of humor to make it more easy to digest. And I myself perhaps didn't enjoy that too much, because that's not the type of things that I perhaps enjoy, but I can understand the effort of the author, so I don't just write it off, you know. I appreciate that line was there, and let's now learn as much as possible. And I encourage you guys to do the same. So, okay, Mr. Metallic. In an age where serious players has a powerful chess engine, in an age where every serious player has a powerful chess engine, I've watched a chess pandemic appear that's unlike anything that's ever been seen before. So, you know, Mr. Metallic, Mr. Pink, Mr. Orange, in all of us, there are all of these three, right? So it's about understanding our tendencies and try to handle them. So, okay, let's go. So there is this pandemic, this chess pandemic. What is it? While following live Grandmaster games, the masses of chess fans all suffer from a shared chess psychosis. They think they know exactly what's going on. Topalov plays some extremely complex move, and thousands write in eerie unison, Topalov is 1.02 up, he's going to win. And if you've ever followed the chess lives and you open the chat, it's just crazy. As a matter of fact, I enjoy following the lives with the chat open, but because like it feels like you're watching with somebody, right? It feels like much more real in a way. However, sometimes, I'll be very honest, I have to close it because it's just, the comments are outrageous. And I'm not just talking about the evaluation, it's really sometimes they go so much outside of chess, but in a really bad way. I can't handle it. And I'm the first one to want to have fun and have a lighthearted moment. I'm a very fun person in a way, right? I like to make jokes, to do lighthearted things, but sometimes the chats are just really too terrible. So sometimes I really have to close it, and sometimes it is exactly because of this reason, like these tremendous hubris, but like really outrageous. It's not people trying to figure it out and trying to discuss. It's really outrageous hubris, and they're not trolling. That's the thing. It's crazy. I have to close it sometimes. So, anyways. I often enjoy it, but there are some moments where I really have to close it. Anyways, so they are parroting the engine's assessment, but they seem to mistake it for their own. They stare at their machine's rapid-fire burst of moves, but do they understand why it's recommending them? One might think that a chess player will see beyond the illusion and not confuse his own strengths with those of his computer. Sadly, this is often not the case. And this same illness carries over to postal chess and analysis. True. Of course, once these computer-enhanced fans take part in an over-the-board tournament, their false reality quickly crashes and burns. True. But they can also be brought down to earth by a few words from a good chess teacher. And this is also like, this is not just to criticize the fans, because a lot of them are perhaps very young people, they are like perhaps, I'm not saying kids, but like really, really young people that perhaps enter chess because of the Queen's Gambit or because of other reasons, and the reality is they don't have proper guidance. So of course I'm not going to endure their stupidity, but on the same time I'm not like insulting them because their stupidity is just because of ignorance, and ignorance is fixable. But unfortunately, I think that, sorry if I'm going on a rant, but I think that platforms like chess.com especially, they don't really do anything to like educate people properly, I think they do the opposite. They encourage this use of engines and stuff like that. For example, I don't know if you noticed, but during the live commentary there are some messages that people write, and people write a lot of messages, but the chess.com team selects some messages and they make them appear, which means whatever you make appear the most incentivizes people to behave like that, because of course there is the positive reward of being published publicly. And it's very silly, but that's how human mind works. And a lot of the time, these comments are completely crazy. They're almost never educational. They're just outrageous things, very emotional things, right? Instead of trying to advertise the viewer's smart comments, right? And I'm sure there are. No, they choose the most outrageous things, like, oh, this guy's gonna win because of this, something ridiculous, right? And there are sometimes some people that write things that are interesting. Those things never get published. So, if you don't educate people, of course, people are not gonna be educated. That's very simple. People that know things, as in my opinion, has a duty to like help others, not encourage chaos. But this is my opinion. Sorry for this rant, guys, but these things I think must be said. Okay, now, what were we? Here we go. All he needs to ask, so again, it can be also, but they can also be brought down to earth by a few words from a good chess teacher. Yeah. All he needs to ask, once an interesting position appears, is, what's going on here? Meaning you want verbal also explanation, right? And suddenly, an honest student will realize that he's deceived himself. Since he hasn't mastered the imbalances, he can't answer the question in any deep and penetrating manner. And I'll be honest, even me, rated whatever I'm rated, 90-72 FIDE, and studying these things, I still struggle tremendously. Like, if you ask me what's going on here, I'll give you an answer for sure, but I'll struggle a lot. And my answer may not be very good. So, this is difficult stuff. Okay, so, and telling the teacher that so-and-so is 0.43 ahead borders on the insane. A chess engine can be very useful, but it can also turn into a crutch that actually prevents you from improving. Yeah, so again, you have to be able to use it as a tool, which is what it is. So Mr. Metallic was created to show how nobody thinks like a computer, nor would we want to. Chess is a game rich in emotion, art, the rush of competition, and the joy of creation. Streams of variations and displayed numbers 0.21 turn a warm, extremely human game into something cold and unknowable. And something that really leaves me speechless is when I go on chessgames.com, which is super famous, you probably have saw it, and you go under some beautiful, phenomenal games and you see people discussing. And instead of having somebody that says, whoa, here I thought this movie is interesting, right? You see literally people copy-pasting 30 lines of the engine with the evaluation. It's unbelievable. And it's sad. It's very sad. Sorry if I sound like a boomer hater, but, sometimes I agree with the boomers, sometimes I disagree. Here I think that's absolutely on point. So anyways, gives to Caesar what's of Caesar and God what's of God, or something on those lines. Okay, so Mr. Pink, when you don't have a grasp of the imbalances, you are left with absolutely nothing. So Mr. Pink is the very materialistic guy, move by move, very scared because, oh my god, that's a threat, right? So when you don't have a grasp of the imbalances, you are left with absolutely nothing, or, as in the case of Mr. Pink, with caveman basics like attack, defend, threats, and calculation. These are good things, everyone needs them, but is this simplistic ABC approach all you want for yourself? And I think Mr. Pink is perhaps even more educational than Mr. Metallic, because we all have Mr. Pink. And Mr. Pink, the caveman, which sounds very funny, is, I think, what we default when we are tired, or when we are in time pressure, and when we are not exercising proper logical thinking. And that's why, in my opinion, I still haven't gone there, but I think that's true. There is a chapter called Imbalanced Consciousness or something, meaning Silman wants to make his students have this way of thinking as the default settings. Because my default settings right now are move by move. My default settings are Mr. Pink. If I don't have time to think, if I'm tired, I'm Mr. Pink. Except a weak version of Mr. Pink, which is even worse. The goal would be to have Mr. Orange on default settings, meaning when you are tired or when you are low on time, you are a Mr. Orange, right? And when you are not tired, when you are in top form, you are like enhanced Mr. Orange. Like you are Mr. Orange, but you also calculate, you do the due diligence, and you're really a strong player. So anyways, let's go. Mr. Orange. Though Mr. Orange couldn't calculate quite as deeply as his opponents, he saw far more than either of his foes. The imbalances gave him a well-rounded positional education that offered him a solid understanding of both quiet, static positions and sharp, dynamic ones. Very important. Go back and look at all the comments. We are not going to do that. If you want to do it yourself, go back and rewatch the part of this video, or, as I encourage you guys to do, buy this course. I think it's fantastic. You don't have to buy the video version, that costs quite a bit. But if you want, I think that Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, which is the presenter, is very good. But if you just don't want to spend a lot of money, the course, I think, costs like or 20 or 30 bucks, which is nothing. It's basically like a lounge somewhere, and it's just tremendous value. So that's what I recommend to do if you're interested in that. And they didn't pay me to say that, just to be clear. I just think it's fair, because I'm showing this content for free. Let's be real, this is technically illegal what we are doing, so the minimum you can do, guys, is go and buy this course. I already done it. This is of course bought course, but okay. Anyways, go back to look at all the comments. It's clear that Mr. Orange was the only one who had any idea about the position's secrets and ultimate worth. Now we turn to you, the reader of this book, you guys watching this video. You might not calculate very well, or you might calculate better than Mr. Orange. It's always a good thing if you have the ability to calculate quickly and deeply, but knowledge of the imbalances will often get you by, even if your absolute limit is a 2 or 3 move sequence. But, so having said that, you may not calculate so well, yeah? But wouldn't you rather be in Mr. Orange's shoes? If so, you are on your way to acquiring the knowledge that most players, for some reasons that elude me, simply don't have. And that's very interesting. Yeah, I know a bunch of relatively high-rated players. You know, we are not talking about masters, but we're talking about like 2000, 1900s, 1800s, playing for 10, 20 years. They don't know this stuff. It is crazy. I don't know this stuff, but now I'm fixing it. And if you don't know this stuff, well, you are fixing it, so we are good. Philosophy. A chess engine can be very useful, but it can also turn into a crutch that actually prevents you from improving. This is true, I agree, and I love using the engine, and I use the engine, but again, you have to know when to use it. Like, for example, in recent times, since now I'm doing this evaluation of the position, I only use it in, like, if there is a move that perhaps a line in a book or in a course says, and I'm like, what does this move do? Then I go and open the engine. But it's for very concrete lines. So, then there is this line which is called talk to the board and it will talk to you. So let's see what this is about. Everyone has some sort of internal dialogue when it's their turn to move. This is super important, guys, because this is where it's difficult to improve. Because the internal monologue is where really the magic happens. If you think about Daniel Naroditsky, if you think about Roman Zinzikashvili, Daniel Naroditsky is perhaps the best example of this. He was so good at speaking English, and he had such a good organized way of presenting. And he was such a strong player. And these two things, in my opinion, are correlated. Now, I'm not saying that every chess grandmaster is good at speaking and whatever, but he's definitely good at organizing his thoughts in a logical manner. Anyways, let's keep going. Everyone has some sort of internal dialogue when it's their turn to move. Most players stare blankly at the board and think, I go there, and he goes there, and I go there, and he goes there. This is what I've been doing my whole life, basically. It's pure calculation, usually based on fear, aggression, or simply the desire to find something, anything that seems reasonable. I can confirm this is true, and guys, you must be honest, not with me, with yourself. If that's you, which is also me, that's good news. And you may say, how is that good news? I'm doing terrible. Yes, but you know it. And all you have to do is to fix it. And whatever rating you have by doing terrible, imagine just fixing it, like you're going to improve tremendously. And in the beginning, of course, there's going to be some moment of, let's say, adjustment. So don't expect to like skyrocket your rating or anything like that in the next day. But it slowly will come for sure. So I'm very excited. I got to 1972 FIDE by saying I go here, he goes here. So it's pure calculation. However, if I stopped you from calculating and asked, can you verbally break this position down for me? The odds are that your answer wouldn't be lecture worthy. And now think about Naroditsky, how good he was, right? He was such a good player, bro. And he's, when I made the video, Are You Ready to Become a Master? One of the people that I was saying thank you to was Daniel Naroditsky, because you'll be surprised perhaps, but when he said, and this move here is what the good Russian schoolboy would make, right? When he was saying that sentence, I was like, damn, he must have some very classical, good, strong, foundational preparation, right? And I think it's true. So he's one of the ones that put me on this journey to understand the Russian school of chess, and he's helping me tremendously. So yeah, what do you gotta say? Okay, so again, if you guys try to verbalize a position, it probably wouldn't be lecture worthy. Make no mistake about this. At any given moment, you should be able to lecture other players about the pros and cons of any position you reach. If you're not able to do this and you're saying, oh, but that's impossible, guys, don't be scared. I'm also frightened, right? But let's not be scared. Hold ground. It's all good. You're going to learn it. I'm going to learn it. Step by step. Don't run away. Running away leads nowhere. So let's stay there. You can do it. Okay. So, and if you can't put your thumb on the pulse of the position, if you don't know what both sides need to accomplish, then how are you going to find the right move? It's like asking for driving directions to an unknown place. This is why most players feel lost at sea. They feel they don't know what's going on, and so try to patch up the cracks by looking for threats and or looking for ways to create them. They know something's wrong, something's missing, but they don't know what to do about it, and this creates a feeling of powerlessness. Trust me when I tell you that it doesn't have to be this way. And Silman's not lying to you guys. I'm gonna tell you in this brief time that, the past month at this point, so it's not really that brief time right now, but I've been going over this book here, the first chapter or two, which I'm sharing with you right now. And I've tried recently, when I have to solve a puzzle or when I'm looking at a position, I'm trying to evaluate the position first. And it has helped me. And I'm noticing I'm improving. And I'm noticing that when I try to evaluate, I'm not that lost at sea anymore. I still struggle, of course, and I miss a billion things, but I'm improving at that. So guys, again, you will improve at this. It's all about your brain getting used to it. You feel lost because your brain is not used to it, is a new thing, and you are confused. But just repeat it sometimes, and at some point, you're going to be surprised. You're almost going to be bored. You're almost going to be like, oh, I have to evaluate the position. That's so boring. Yeah, there is this, there is this, there is this, and boom, you have evaluated. I know it sounds science fiction right now, but trust me, that's how it works. Is all what you're feeling is just your brain seeing something new for the first time. It's not actually that complicated. You are just surprised, which is normal. Is normal. So let's keep going. Trust me when I tell you that it doesn't have to be this way, of course. It's time to get a bit crazy. And I like it. Let's go. Once you master the imbalances, and if you read this book from beginning to end, you will master the imbalances, and we are going to read it together, so no panic there as well. So, once you master the imbalances, it will be time to get up close and personal with the board. In general, you can figure out a good deal about any position by doing the following. First up is the Armageddon discourse. So let's see what he's talking about here. Make sure you are aware of any crude threats by the opponent, and also do a quick search for any basic tactical themes that might be present. This is usually done subconsciously by players 1800 and up. However, I would argue if you do it consciously, it then becomes unconscious, with the difference that you improve at it, because you notice what you miss and what you don't. However, if you are lower rated, are prone to blunders, or feel that you have serious tactical issues, then it's a good idea to take a few moments to get on top of this stuff. But even if you are lower rated, I also want to do this. So, and if you are higher rated, I think it's a good idea to do it, because we are introducing so many new things, especially if you are not used to proper evaluation. I'm not used to evaluation at all, but if you're not used to proper evaluation, it's good to be conscious about everything, at least in the beginning. That's my opinion. Once you have made sure that Thor's hammer isn't going to descend on your head, it's time for loftier considerations. Ascertain the imbalances for both sides. Then ask the board, in an internal dialogue, what move or series of moves tries to take advantage of these factors. Pretty simple. Let me stress once again that you should not be after plans per se. Don't allow yourself to get distracted by the P word. That is plan. You nasty. Okay. But rather, moves that cater to the imbalances. As we have seen, when you do this, plans often seem to materialize by themselves. Let's see how the imbalances can dictate the course that both players take in a game. So I'm gonna write this down, guys, because this is crucially important, like beyond your any belief. So first thing first, one, material. 2, Armageddon discourse. Parentheses, immediate. No, I have to write the precise things. Crude threats. Plus basic research of basic tactical themes. Okay. Okay. And then 3 imbalances. And then 4, what does my opponent wants to do? What I want to do? And what are the moves and all that. Okay, I'm gonna go back on this. So, Now let's see Gatakamsky against Topalov. Sofia 2009. So e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, bishop f5, knight f3, e6, bishop e2, c5, bishop e3, c takes, knight e7, knight d2, knight b2, c6, knight 2 to f3, bishop g4, castle, bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, to protect the pawn on e5, g6. Okay, so we reach this position. Before looking at the comments, I'm only looking at the board. You guys please do the same. Let's try to evaluate using the step-by-step we have here. Let me turn on this light so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay, so material. So let's count the material. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 3, 7, 1 knight, 3 minor pieces. Okay, so material is equal. Armageddon discourse. So are there any threats? Checks, threat of mates, captures, threats. There are no checks, captures, knight takes c5, knight takes e5. Seems good, there is no way to exploit that. Bishop g7, we even have knight d3 to protect b2, but in general we are good. Threats, they could play queen c7, but I guess there are ways to defend that with bishop d4 or bishop f4. Queen b6 cannot be played. So there are no immediate threats that I can see. d4 we can just take. So we are good when it comes to the threats. Now imbalances. Okay, let's now go finally to the imbalances. So we have the bishop pair. That's the first imbalance. There is a semi-open c file, which can be good for black. There is a semi-open d file, but the d5 pawn is quite strongly defended. What else? We have more space in the center and on the king side, thanks to the e5 pawn. That e5 pawn, though, is a little bit weak, can be attacked by means of queen c7 and bishop to g7. What else? There is this strong pawn structure, which again is d5, e6, f7. We may want to attack it in the future with moves like c4 to kind of disrupt their coordination, but I don't know. Let's compare the pieces. I will say that perhaps, our bishop pair, we have the bishop pair, but it's not super active. And after something like bishop g7, queen c7, it feels like their pieces are doing more than our pieces. The knight may come to f5, which finds a very good square. So, yeah, black has some good pieces, potentially speaking. However, black is a little bit behind in development. So perhaps the conclusion is that white is okay, perhaps even slightly better, statically speaking, because even better because he has more space and the bishop pair. However, he has to act quickly, perhaps opening up the center and doing something like that. So, let's go. But let's see, again, this is my evaluation, guys. So the evaluation is white is better, but has to be quick. So he has to be like kind of concrete. What does my opponent wants to do? Okay, my opponent wants to play bishop g7, queen c7, and finish his development. What I want to do? Well, I admit I don't see a clear plan for white. Perhaps opening up the position to utilize the bishop pair, something like c4. But also trying to disrupt black's coordination somehow, but I really don't know how. Perhaps I would want to use the d4 square, but if I play knight to d4 now, the pawn on e5 hangs. It's true that if I play knight d4 and they take my pawn, I have bishop b5 check. But they can always go back with a knight, and after knight takes, pawn takes, or knight takes, it seems like they're fine. So I really don't know. What would I play in this position? Perhaps I will genuinely play c4 here. What I don't like about c4 is that after I play c takes d5, knight takes d5, they have a fantastic outpost for their knight. That's something that I don't like at all. There's also some dark square weakness, like the d6 square, the f6 square. If I could get a knight to d6, for example, that would be huge. A bishop to d6 wouldn't be terrible, even though it's easily attacked. Bishop g5, which is of course a move that I'm seeing from below here, makes some sense because pings the knight and perhaps wants to go to f6, but again doesn't convince me too much. Rook e1 perhaps, trying to guard that pawn by x-rays. I don't know. Perhaps b4 with the idea of playing b5, trying to get rid of that knight. But then that weakens tremendously c2. So yeah, confusing position. Let's see what I will play in a real game. Probably c4. That would be my move. c4. Let's see what he says. White's dialogue. He's going to, and it's funny because I already saw this position, but I can't remember it. He's going to play bishop g7 and tie me up down to the fence of the e5 pawn. My main pluses are the hole on f6 that g6 created, a leading development, and his central king. Central king that I didn't even mention. So as you can see, guys, I'm not doing a very good evaluation of the position. Like, one of the main imbalances is our king's castle, there's not. But I didn't even saw it. I didn't even consider it. But I am doing it, right? And in order to improve and to learn, you have to do it. So my main pluses are this, and that, so I have to get something going before he rectifies those problems with a simple bishop g7 and castle. So again, since I haven't identified the imbalance of their king in the center, when I said what is black trying to do, I thought only about attacking this pawn, but I also want to castle. So bishop g7 and castling would be the most correct. So bishop g5, and these are only thinking, he's just calculating, he's not moving. So bishop g5 eyeing f6 doesn't accomplish anything after bishop g7. Since bishop f6, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight g8, wins my pawn. This leaves me with queen to d2, in this position queen to d2, which I didn't even consider for some reasons. Queen to d2 followed by bishop h6. The trade of dark square bishops might highlight the weakness on f6 and also leaves his king a bit loose, or c4, trying to reopen the position. And so if queen d2, there is bishop g7, bishop h6, takes, knight f5, which attacks the queen, protects g7, the queen goes back, and now knight h4 isn't much, so I'll give c4 a go and try and generate some action before his king gets castled. So after the move g6, indeed, c4 was played by Kamsky. Now, the reason why I considered c4 is not because his king is in the middle, which is the reason why I should consider it, but it's also because I didn't find any alternative, and also because of a couple of considerations. First of all, I have some knowledge that this is a Caro-Kann, right? It was a Caro-Kann, and in this Caro-Kann type of position, c4 is a key move. This is something that I personally knew. And also, I said that there is this semi-open C file, so an idea that I had was like, let's get rid of the potential weakness on C2. That was also an idea. But okay, and remember, I already read this chapter, so even though I didn't remember it, my brain still have already seen it, so I had an advantage. Okay, now we play C4, now let's listen to what black has to say. This move, which tries to open up the position, makes a lot of sense. However, if he captures on d5, my knight will find a great home there, which is also what I was thinking. And there is a bishop versus knight battle, so I want my knights to be as well placed as possible. Since none of this worries me, I'll continue with my intended bishop g7 and force his end. Of course, he can chop on d5 and stop me from castling with bishop c5. But what if I simply step back with bishop f8? My king would be quite happy on g7, and I can't be worse with a knight sitting on that magnificent d5 square. So bishop g7, white dialogue. He's about to castle, so I have to follow through with c takes d5. Takes, knight takes, of course. Black dialogue, I can't be worse with a knight like this. Bishop c5. Black's dialogue. Of course, my king is in the center, so I'm not going to do anything crazy like knight takes c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, bishop b5 check, and I would have to resign. However, I have no problem whatsoever with the exchange of dark square bishops. And again, guys, this is like Silman being didactical. No one, even the very strong grandmasters, exactly thinks like this, right? There are dirtinesses in the thought process of everyone. right? So if you're not thinking this clinically, nobody does. This is, of course, for exemplificatory purposes. But is again, you have to have the mindset of trying to improve, not to be perfect. This is important. So bishop c5, black says I cannot take because of tactical reasons, so bishop back to f8. And white thinks, I'm not going to take on f8 since that will help him get his king to g7. Instead, I'll try queen c1, intending to take on f8, followed by queen h6 check. Okay, very interesting. So, okay, for you guys to help you, he wants to go to c1, and if black does nothing, you take, they take with the king, and then queen to h6 check. The idea would be that you either go back into the center, but that's not ideal, or you go to g8, not g7, meaning the rook is trapped forever, and moves like knight g5 may be annoying. Maybe, I don't know. h4, h5 as well. So queen c1. Black dialogue. An interesting move. He intends to chop on f8, and then after king takes f8, stop my plan king g7 with queen h6. I'm also not high on bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, which still prevents castling, rook c8, rook a to c1. And if you move the knight, you either lose the rook, or if you move the knight defending the rook, you lose the pawn on a7. It's not the end of the world, but he's managed to stop me from getting my king to safety. Why give him anything? Seems to me that the problem with queen to c1 is that he's sticking his queen on a file that my rook can occupy. After rook to c8, bishop takes f8, I have a little tactic. So after queen to c1, indeed Vasilin Topalov played rook c8, and after bishop takes f8, there is this little bit of a tricky variation, knight to d4. White dialogue. Well, what can you do? When a guy plays well, he plays well. He didn't let me achieve any of my goal. Now, of course, the queen's hanging and the bishop's hanging, so you have to defend the bishop, but now knight takes e2 with check, important. Queen takes e2, king takes f8, rook a to c1, king g7. White dialogue. Okay, I have absolutely nothing. Time to tighten up and make a draw. Indeed, the game ended in a draw in 43 moves. Translated, it was a full game of chess, right? But note how all the ruminations were centered on the imbalances, and all the variations were also dedicated to the imbalances. This kind of logical breakdown of a position works for grandmasters, and it will work for you too. That's true. Again, we are just not used to it. Our next example demonstrates how basic and balanced dialogue can help solve double-edged complicated positions. Okay, so let's see this. The position is quite sharp. Okay, no, before reading this, let's evaluate. So, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2 bishops, 1 queen. Okay, so material is equal. Armageddon discourse, crude threats. Are there any crude threats? Queen takes h2. Queen takes h2 is... Queen takes h2 is a crude threat. So the h2 pawn is hanging. But there are no checks, so our white king is relatively safe. Instead, we have at least one check on h7. There are other checks like queen e7 or queen d8, but they're ridiculous. So, okay, let's try to evaluate this position. So, well, we're doing it. So I said material is equal. We said the Armageddon-wise h2 is in danger. Let's now look at the imbalances. So when it comes to space, we have some more space in the center. King positions, it feels like our king is safer than their king. We have the bishop pair. Our bishop on h6 is attacking, very strong. Their knight on g7 is terrible, is pinned, is horrible. Our rook on g1 is also putting pressure on the side of the board where the king is. And the rook is trying to do the same, but our pawn on b3 is very solid, the b3 point in general. Yeah, our light square bishop can potentially be good, but right now is shut down. The bishop on c7 is helping the queen in exerting pressure on h2. Our queen is attacking e4. What else? King safety, again, I think our king is safer. They have weak pawns a little bit everywhere. We have a pass pawn on d5. We have a pass pawn on d5. They have weak pawns on e4, c5, and a6. But they're attacking h2. So the evaluation is that white is better, in my opinion. But he needs to calculate and find some concrete moves. Needs to find some concrete moves. Since we are attacking, it feels like black's plan is to perhaps exchange queens and win this pawn on h2. After queen takes h2, queen, if it was black to move, is white to move. But if it was black to move, queen takes h2, queen takes e4, queen takes f2 check. Looks good for black. So okay, it's our turn to move though. What are our moves? Well, we want to try and attack. How can we try and attack? Well, first move I consider bishop takes g7 check, king takes g7. I don't really see a follow-up. I really do not see it. I really don't. And what else? So let's look at queen takes e4. So queen takes e4, queen takes h2, attacks the bishop, attacks the rook, right? What can I play here? What can I play? There is rook h1 actually there. There is rook h1, queen to f2 check, king b1. I'm not sure I see a proper continuation though. But maybe that's interesting. What else? Queen takes e4, queen takes h2, rook h1, queen takes f2 check. Oh, there is bishop d2 as well, which threatens rook h8 checkmate. They can play knight h5, stopping that. And that, what do we have? It's not clear, but we may play d6 or something, and if they take, we have rook f1. So perhaps I will go with queen takes e4. So let's see what the masters do. So the position is quite sharp. I'm not saying this is correct, guys. Not saying this is correct. Again, I'm just trying. The position is quite sharp. White could focus on thoughts of the potential weak pawns on a6, c5, e4, f2, and h2. But he knows from experience that such a dynamic position calls for a dynamic solution. We will discuss static versus dynamic in part 6. Several things might have caught White's eye. The knight is pinned. If the bishop wasn't on h6, queen h8 would win. If queen f6 was possible, that would win the knight. And if d5, d6 could be played, yeah, that would open the a2, g8 diagonal for White's light square bishop. And these are all the Armageddon discourse, which I didn't do properly at all. A fact that might well increase the power of an attacking against Black's king. So rook to g4, winning. I didn't even consider this move. Now I'll be honest, again, I went through this position already in previous times, and I remember that the correct solution was like moving the rook somewhere, but I didn't even try to look for it because, again, I wouldn't have thought about it. So I just wanted to have my natural way of thinking and then have it corrected. Bishop f4 is threatened, and Black has no good way to deal with it. Okay. Many players will just give up on it and play something like bishop g5, which also embraces some of the points we discussed. But there is knight h5. If queen takes h2, there is queen takes h2 with rook h1, and there is rook h8 mate actually. If king to g8, there is bishop e7, and you are going to play d6. Queen takes c4 is my move. No, wait, no it's not. Because it's with knight h5. But one gets the impression that he should have been able to do much better. In the game, White knew that bishop f4 was ideal but not immediately possible, but instead of saying I can't, he went out of this way to find a move that would make bishop f4 a reality. Okay? Queen takes h2. Queen b6, there is d6. On queen d6, bishop f4. On bishop takes d6, queen f6. Bishop f4. On king g8, bishop f4. And if you take, there is the push. Or queen takes h2. Queen f6. This is a key move. And after this, d6. d6 is the key move. Now, I'm not talking much because I'm eating, but you guys can read by yourself, of course. This is important though. There will be much more on this kind of I want to do it and I will find a way mentality in part 4, psychological mandarins. Okay. You now know what an imbalance is. You know that imbalances can help you figure out what's going on in most positions. And you know that achieving a firm understanding of each individual imbalance will catapult your past, will catapult you past the players that you consider to be your equals. If you're ready to dedicate yourself to the study of this book, if you're ready to immerse yourself in new and illuminating concepts, then head for the next chapter and begin an exciting new journey of chess discovery. This is so good. This is so good. Summary, and then we're done with this chapter. Let me eat. So, imbalances breakdown. Superior minor piece, we talked about it. Pawn structure. Space, material, control of a key file, control of a hole or weak squares, leading development. Then there is initiative, although I'll usually refer to it as pushing your own agenda. King safety, static versus dynamics. What is an imbalance? An imbalance is any significant difference in the two respective positions. If you want to be successful, you have to base your moves and plans on the specific imbalance-oriented criteria that exist in the given position, and not on your mood, tastes, and/or fears. Imbalances act as a roadmap that shows each side what to do. Imbalance consciousness is a state where the user of imbalances becomes a natural and often unconscious process. I'm going to read this again because it's important. Imbalance consciousness is a state where the use of imbalances becomes a natural and often unconscious process. Imbalances are the doorway to planning. The imbalances alone will lead you to the right moves in most positions, or even help you create a detailed plan. The initiative is a physical manifestation of a psychological battle. Both sides champion their view of things in the hope that the opponent will have to eventually forego his own plans and react to yours. Thus, I usually refer to it as pushing your own agenda. A chess engine can be very useful, but it can also turn into a crutch that actually prevents you from improving. The Armageddon discourse is a basic thinking stage where you look for traps, threats, and tactical themes. This is usually done subconsciously by players 1800 and up. However, if you are lower rated, are prone to blunders, or feel that you have serious tactical issues, then it's a good idea to take a few moments to get on top of this stuff. Okay, so we finished learning this chapter. That was great. And now it's time to go to part 2, Knights, Psychopaths of the Chessboard. I'm gonna close down the curtains of the window and I'm gonna be back. I think this video is gonna be very long. I may interrupt it now, actually, and just do another part. I'm gonna be recording back to back because I have a lot of energy. I feel really good now. I think I'm gonna do this. So guys, I'm gonna interrupt this one here because I don't want this video to become too big. In the next video, which is episode 4 of how to reassess your chess series, I am going to go over part 2, Knights, Psychopaths of the Chessboard. For you, it's going to be the next video. For me, it's going to be in a second. And if the videos are already all published, for you, it's also going to be in a second. Go check the video out. Very important. Okay? Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy your chess.